Hey guys, welcome back to Room Before Race, and today we're testing the brand new Mercedes CLS. Now the CLS is a bit of a design icon. It came originally in 2003, and for me personally it holds quite a special place in my heart. That was the first ever Mercedes that I actually spec'd up myself. I'll show you what it looked like. And I was in love with this car, as we all were. We used to call it the banana car. And now this one is also controversial, but for other reasons, and we will get to that. And it's all about the design of the rear end of the car, whether people like it or not. But on the design, let's start with the front first of all. So starting with the front of the car, you're going to notice it looks quite similar to some other Mercedes you've seen. And the one that it probably looks the most similar to is something like the AMG GT. And the reason that is, it's got that same predator face that Mercedes have started introducing to all their cars. And what that basically means is you look at the diamond grille, it swoops downward and widens as it gets to the bottom. And the lights, again, very distinctively, that sort of AMG GT look as well. The other thing that this entire front end was designed around is something that Mercedes calls the shark nose, and I'll show you what they mean by that. And it actually does quite look like a shark's nose at the front, which is quite cool. Now, because this is a coupe and it's not a saloon, the CLS gets the Diamond Sport grille. So again, that shows that it's different immediately to the E-Class, which it's trying to separate itself from. Another new thing that they've brought in the design of the newer Mercs is having an almost separate bottom front splitter, which I'll show you a close-up of. The new A-Class has this as well, and it splits along the side of the wheel arch and goes all the way around the bottom, which is quite cool. You also notice sort of the front flicks in the front bumper, quite similar to the Project One, the AMG GTR, so it all links quite nicely to the other famous coupes. On the side, you'll see more of what Mercedes are now changing in their Essential Purity design. Head designer Gordon Wagner said that in this new generation of Mercedes-Benz design, it's all about reducing the lines of the car. So he said, if you like the shape of it, remove a line. And the basic idea behind that is you have an as simple design as possible with fewer creases, fewer angles, fewer design features, but maintaining the shape that is iconic. And you get that in the CLS. So whereas the old car had that famous ponton rear, that's all gone. You've only got one strong shoulder across the side. You've got your normal Mercedes side trim at the bottom, but it still has the shape that you kind of expect from the side. So this is the main change from the previous design that Mercedes were running to the one that is now being taken forward. The wheels are as you expect. You get a number of wheel options. We'll get onto wheels when I talk about the performance of the car. But now let's talk about the most controversial part of the CLS, and that's the rear end. So let's have a look at that now. We have to talk about the rear end because this is the most controversial point. I was very unsure about it when I first saw the pictures, same as you guys, you were all unsure. I think the sticking point here is the lights, the position of them, the size of them, whereas the previous two CLSs we quite liked. I think probably the first one was the best with regards to the rear end. This one has split opinion, and it's always difficult when a car does that. Now, I've seen it in the flesh, obviously. I saw it first at Frankfurt. Looking at it again here, it looks a lot better in the flesh, but what I'm going to do is, rather than give you my opinion, I'm going to give you as many shots of the rear as I possibly can, and you guys can now decide for yourself what you think of it. In person, I think it looks pretty damn good actually, especially from that 3/4 angle that I'll show you now. But I do understand why it splits opinion, and now having seen the supercar version of the CLS, which is the AMG GT 63 or the AMG GT 4-door, you can see how a 4-door Mercedes Super Coupe can look even better. So that makes it even tougher, I guess, for us to look at this and love it. But there is a lot to love about it. You've got the number plate positioned rather than in the middle of the boot. It's underneath the Mercedes star, telling you that it is a coupe. The coolest thing I like about the rear is inside the lights. You've got an almost three-dimensional light effect, which is done by edge-lit LEDs. So it gives a really three-dimensional look to those rear lights, and that's been brought into the new C-Class as well, and the new A-Class. So I expect you'll see that across the range now. You've also got the little air intakes on the side, which are very much sport coupe, as you'll see on the C Coupe and other cars like that. But the funny thing about the rear end is, although opinion seems to be split on this, the standard car, the CLS 53, if you look at it, looks like an incredible, incredible car, and everybody seems to love the rear end with the quad exhausts on the back and the extra spoiler lip, which really seems to help, and the added width of the wheels. That rear end just seems to work so well. But now let's go and have a look at the inside, where opinion is not split, and honestly it's one of the best interiors you will see on a coupe. So the inside of the car. Now, as I said, this is pretty much class leading, or at least opinion is not divided on this. It is absolutely gorgeous, and I'm really grateful that we got such a gorgeous spec from Mercedes-Benz Beaconsfield, both outside and in. So you've got something that you'll see quite commonly here, which is a black leather interior. But what sets it apart is this lovely silver wood grain, and it really, really suits the CLS. It just gives it such a premium look inside, alongside all the satin chrome work that you've got going around the interior. Now, what separates the CLS from, say, if you've seen my E63 review in terms of interior, because obviously the two cars are very closely linked in terms of interior, you would be forgiven for thinking you're sitting in an E-Class. But what sets the CLS apart is, first of all, the seats. Now, the seats have been specifically designed for the CLS, both in the front and the rear seats as well, to match the look and the design of the front seats. So if you've seen something like a Porsche Panamera, where you've got what almost looks like 4 sports seats, it kind of gives you the same sort of feel here. And in the rear, the seats are quite different to the previous CLSs. I'll get onto that. Now, some people have complained that the E-Class has a very similar interior to this, and this should have been a bit different. But it's even when I sat in the AMG GT 4-door, which again is similar to this other than the center console, you have to realize that the E-Class has one of the best car interiors in the world at the moment. And what you would end up doing is changing it for the sake of changing it, rather than changing it for function. And it is about function. This is a very functional interior. You've got the 12.3-inch display. You've got wonderful design around here. There's not much that one should change when it's already a winner. Now, there are some other unique things with the CLS. You've got the jet turbine design air vents here, and these are similar to the E-Coupe, but what sets these apart is you've actually got the ambient lighting inside them now. So when they come on and they change color now as the ambient lighting changes color, the car just looks incredible with the entire jet turbine lighting up. As with the E-Class, it's got 64 different colors of ambient lighting, but what's different now, which has come from the S-Class, is you get loads of different color options in the ambient lighting. So there's also dual lighting, and it all changes, and it looks quite cool, and it can change the entire ambience of the car. The other cool thing, which I note I saw in Audi first, is that when you change the temperature here, it actually changes the color of the ambient lighting. So if you're getting colder, all the lights in the car go blue. If you're making it hotter, they all go red, which is a nice little touch to the overall ambience of the car. You also got the brand new steering wheel, which is coming across all Mercedes, all new models now. And it's a really good steering wheel. It's small, flat bottom. This is the sport version, so similar to what you might have seen in a new S-Class. And it's a really good steering wheel. The AMG one looks incredible, but this is not far off that. There are a lot of buttons on the wheel, but you lose the cruise control stalk here. All that stuff is on the front, and it's not as difficult to use as you might think. One quite nice touch is there's actually a place for you to put the MB key inside the glove box, where it fits quite nicely and securely. And there's also a wireless charging mat here for phones that are compatible. The command system is great. It's just out of the E-Class, as you'd expect it to be. In terms of individual options in driving, this particular car is fitted with steel brakes, so you haven't actually got a huge amount to choose from if you go into the individual mode, which I'll do now. If we go into dynamic select, you've only got drive, steering and ESP. Now, if you had either air body control or dynamic body control as suspension options, which are extras, that would come into the individual as well. At the moment, it's a bit sparse, and you can almost just choose from the Comfort, Eco, Sport, Sport Plus that you have as standard. So not hugely useful, this particular function. But now let's jump in the rear, and this is where the big news is about this generation of CLS. Right, so climbing into the rear, as you can see, it's a 5-seater for the first time. Now this is really going to help the sales of the CLS. It makes it a more practical car anyway. You've still got really sporty looking seats, as I said, but being a 5-seater, the CLS really needed this, and it sets it now apart from the previous generations where you could only have 4 seats. So that's great. And in terms of headroom, I'm 5'10", and it is tight. There's about an inch left above here. I would be comfortable in it, but anyone taller might struggle a little bit and might have to sit a bit lower in the seat. The leg room is decent, probably not as much as something like the Grand Coupe. In addition to that, you can also fold down these seats to a 40-20-40 ratio, and it increases the boot capacity, which is about 520 anyway, so it's quite a big boot. But now let's get on to the performance and the driving and see what this Grand Touring Coupe is like on the road. So the first thing you notice when driving the new CLS, much like the E-Class, is the 12.3-inch digital screen in front of you. And it really is a great representation of how to do digital screens really, really well, because the information that you can change and customize on there is brilliant. And you also get 3 different styles of speedo. So I'm going to show them to you now. I tend to keep it in progressive, but if we move into classic first, you see it's that old school style Mercedes layout, and you can also change anything on the dial on the right to whatever content you want. There's another one which is sport, which is quite similar in its style and design, but it's black and yellow. And then there's, as I said, progressive, and on progressive you can have 2 different customized content bits on each side of the speedo. Then you can also have a separate readout on the side here. So if you go into dynamic select, you can either have the vehicle information, so how much the wheels are turning, G-force, etc., or you can have the torque and the brake horsepower, which is quite a cool looking readout, and it matches what you have design-wise on the screen in front of you. So although I like analog speedos, this interpretation of the speedometer in digital form is probably the best that I've seen out there. So big thumbs up for the digital display. The other thing in the driver zone is the new Mercedes steering wheel. Again, this is out of the new S-Class. It is a really good steering wheel. I really like how small the diameter is. I like the fact that it's flat bottomed. It's thick, but it's not too thick. I really do like having the 2 touch buttons. So if you guys don't know, the one on the right hand side of the steering wheel controls all the information in the screen directly in front of you, and the one on the left controls everything on the main command screen. So it's actually really safe, so you don't really need to mess around with the touchpad here. You can do everything right here from the steering wheel, not having to look away, which is great. The other thing you notice compared to the E-Class is that you're sitting lower, you're in a lower center of gravity, the interior wraps around you more, so it's much more like what you find in the E-Coupe, and that's what you expect coming into a coupe. But now onto the main part. So this is the CLS 350D 4MATIC. So it's basically a 4-wheel drive 350 diesel version of the CLS, and it's likely to be the most popular car here in the UK. But it's not the V6 diesel that we've had in the past 350 cars. This is a new inline 6 which has come out of the brand new S-Class facelift, and it's a really good engine. It's 286 brake horsepower with 600 Newton meters of torque, and that's a big torque figure, and it really is available really quickly, and it's a figure that gets the butterflies going inside. Now when you think my AMG GTR has 700 Newton meters of torque, and the diesel above this 350 also has that same figure. So at 600 it's pushing out a lot of torque, and it is something that you really feel, and it's quite enjoyable when you're driving it in more anger. Before I got into AMGs many years ago, I used to buy the Mercedes diesels, and the 320 CDI was my favorite, especially in the CLS I had. But that was nothing as quick as this. This is 0 to 60 in 5.7 seconds. That is quick for a base diesel. Now if we pop the car into sport, we can try out that 0 to 60 claim and see how it feels. Yeah, it really does feel that quick. Of course, the 4MATIC helps massively in that regard, but what's really nice is you haven't got the noisy diesel engine that you had before. This inline six is really refined, it's really quiet, and it reminds me of some of my favorite diesel engines, like what you would find in the Porsche Panamera, and indeed the BMW diesel engines are fantastic. So this is much more of that ilk than what we used to have in the previous CLS. So when you're doing loads of miles, that factor is really important. And I think the sound deadening is also really good. You don't get a lot of road noise either. So yeah, sound-wise and noise-wise, this is what I am expecting from a luxury coupe. Now, what is exceedingly important in a luxury coupe is having good suspension. And what we've got in this car that I'm driving is the standard steel setup. It's meant to be more comfort biased, but I'm finding on the larger multi-spokes that the ride is quite busy, and well, as you can just see, it's really detracting from what's meant to be a luxurious drive. So if you want to go for the larger wheels, I really think you should go for the optional air body control option, which gives you air suspension. It's more biased to comfort, and then you get more modes that you can choose, such as Comfort Sport and Sport Plus. But if you want to go on the other end and have a more sporty ride, there's dynamic body control as an option, which is more sports biased, and it gives continuous adjustability of the front and rear axles. And again, you get stages of suspension that you can choose with that option. So as I said, there's not a lot of options for you to customize in individual modes. So I've set the car into Sport, which is my favorite setting. It gives you a bit more feedback on the steering, and the gearbox is at that right level of balance where it's not too responsive and it's not laggy. So that's what we're going to go with. And let's talk a little bit about what the handling is like. I know it's not meant to be a sports car. That's not what this is. This is on the luxury and grand touring side of Mercedes-Benz. There's no involvement from AMG. It is meant to be just a sexier version of the E-Class. So I'm not expecting, well, actually, I think the 4MATIC really helps here, especially coming out of a corner, and you get a lot of confidence of the grip that you have on the road, and then that torque figure immediately just helps. I think really we have to compare it to the previous gen, and it's a lot better sorted than the previous CLS 350. So this car does have the new 9-speed, which is going into all the new Mercs. As we've discussed with this 9-speed before, it's really smooth, it shifts when it should, there's no delay, which is a nice change from the old car, which was slightly laggy with the old 7-speed gearbox, but this just works, so it's great. The other option this car is fitted with is the driving assistance package, and I'm glad it is, because that's the other area where the CLS has benefited from the S-Class's technological advancements. Now the system is more intelligent, so when you're coming up to turnings or bends, it slows down a lot earlier in anticipation. And the other thing that used to bug me was in traffic, you would have to press the accelerator if you came to a standstill in order to get the system going again. But now, for at least 30 seconds, it remains active and will keep going in slow traffic, which is a small thing, but it does really help the overall experience of the drive pilot aspect. So in conclusion, the CLS in its 350D guise is the best that it's ever been. The 4MATIC really helps. The new inline 6 engine is responsive, it's fast. The 0 to 60 time is brilliant. You still get upwards of 600 miles out of a tank, which is exactly what you expect from a diesel Merc. And when you want to have a little fun, that torque figure, the 4MATIC come together and allow you to have fun in a CLS 350 like you never really could before. This is the right car for someone who wants a lot of the practicality and the benefits of the E-Class, but in a much more exciting package. It doesn't feel like you're driving something that you would see used as a taxi in Stuttgart. You've got one of the best interiors in the world right now, which has only been made better for the CLS with its unique seats and the lighting that you have inside these vents, and more practical than ever, having 5 seats instead of 4. It's just a really special place to be, and you can see yourself doing tons and tons of miles in a car like this, but in style. This is once again one of the best looking Mercedes that you can buy, and that's really where the CLS should always sit. So guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope that review was informative. if you're looking at the new CLS. Can't wait to drive the new AMG CLS 53 4MATIC. That is going to be a really interesting car. Again, we've got a new engine in the 53 series which we have to explore. What does it sound like? How does it handle? It's going to be a really exciting car, and it looks so good in the pictures that I've seen. So stay tuned for that, hopefully later this year. Please do like and subscribe, and we'll see you again soon. Next time on Remove Before Race, we finally review my M4 CS now that it's fully run in. Let's see if M's latest and greatest can live up to the CS name. Stay tuned.